My brother called and said he would rather have a check than me at his wedding. I did not argue. I did not beg. I sat down, wrote him a check, and sent him exactly $1, with a note he has never shown anyone. The call came on a Tuesday. Not a Friday, when the week is already collapsing and bad news feels appropriate. Not a Sunday, when everything is quiet enough to absorb a blow. A Tuesday, at 11:42 in the morning, while I was standing at my kitchen counter eating leftover pasta out of the container, still in the oversized t-shirt I had slept in, completely unprepared for the sentence that was about to rewrite every memory I had of my brother. His name is Caleb. He is 3 years younger than me. I taught him to tie his shoes. I covered for him the night he came home at 2 in the morning reeking of bad decisions and cheap drinks when we were teenagers, and I told our mother he had been at a study group. I drove 4 hours in a snowstorm to help him move into his first apartment after college. I lent him money he never paid back. I showed up. Over and over and over, in every way that mattered, I showed up. He did not open with hello. He did not ask how I was doing. He cleared his throat once, the way he always does when he is about to say something he has already rehearsed, and he told me that he and Brittany had been talking, and that they had decided the wedding budget was tighter than expected, and that if I wanted to contribute, a financial gift would be more helpful than my presence. I stood there with a forkful of cold pasta suspended halfway to my mouth. He kept talking. Something about venue capacity, something about seating arrangements, something about how Brittany's family was large and they had to make difficult choices, and he said the word practical 4 times in 90 seconds like it was a shield he could hold up between himself and what he was actually doing. What he was actually doing was uninviting me to his wedding and asking me to pay him for the privilege of my absence. I put the fork down. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that, because people always assume the first response to something like this is tears, and it was not. It was something colder and quieter than tears. It was the specific, terrible feeling of watching something you believed in your whole life reveal itself as hollow. Like pressing your hand against what you thought was a wall and feeling it flex inward. Like realizing the foundation was never solid. I asked him once, just once, if this was what he actually wanted. He paused for exactly 2 seconds. It just makes more sense logistically. Logistically. I hung up. Not dramatically. Not after a long speech. I just placed the phone face down on the counter and stood there in my kitchen with cold pasta and the complete restructuring of my understanding of my own family happening quietly inside my chest. Let me tell you about Caleb and me, because you need to understand what I thought we were before you can understand what it meant to find out we were something else entirely. Our parents divorced when I was 11 and he was 8. The kind of divorce that doesn't announce itself loudly but simply erodes everything until one day you notice the house is half empty and nobody is explaining why. My mother worked 2 jobs. My father became a visitor, then a stranger, then a name on a card at Christmas that stopped arriving by the time Caleb was 12. We were each other's constant. Not in a sentimental, movie montage way. In the gritty, unglamorous way that real siblings become each other's primary support system when the adults in the room have vacated the position. I was the one who checked his homework. I was the one who sat outside the bathroom door the night his first serious girlfriend broke up with him senior year and he didn't speak for 3 hours. I was the one who called him every Sunday for 6 years after I moved away for work, not because I had to, but because I genuinely could not imagine a version of my life where Caleb wasn't in it. I believed, with everything I had, that he felt the same way. Brittany entered the picture 4 years ago. She is not a monster. I want to say that clearly, because this story is not about her being a monster. She is simply a woman who wanted a particular kind of wedding with a particular kind of guest list that reflected a particular image of who she and Caleb were as a couple, and I did not fit that image. I am too loud. I say what I think. I have a job in construction management that she once described at a dinner party as very hands-on, in a tone that made the table go briefly quiet. I show up to things in whatever I am wearing rather than whatever the occasion demands. I am not the kind of sister-in-law who makes a future bride feel polished and curated. I knew she didn't love me. I accepted that. I did not need Brittany to love me. I needed my brother to remember who raised him when nobody else was paying attention. He forgot. Or maybe he didn't forget. Maybe that's the part I keep trying to soften because the alternative is worse. Maybe he remembered perfectly and chose her version of his life anyway. Maybe the logistical explanation was just the kindest packaging for the truth, which was that I was not the kind of sister that fit into the future he was building, and he had made his decision before he even picked up the phone. The weeks between that call and the wedding were the strangest of my life. I went to work. I answered emails. I stood on job sites in steel-toed boots and made decisions about load-bearing walls and drainage systems, and I did it all with the specific autopilot competence of someone whose inner life has gone completely offline. My coworker Dana asked me 3 times if I was all right, and I told her 3 times that I was fine, and she looked at me the way people look at you when they know you are not fine but they also know you are not ready to talk about it. My mother knew. Caleb had told her, apparently, framing it as a mutual decision, something about how I had agreed it was for the best. When she called me, her voice had the careful, fragile quality of someone walking across ice, and she said she was sure Caleb hadn't meant it badly, and she said Brittany was under a lot of pressure, and she said she hoped I wasn't going to make things difficult. That word. Difficult. I sat with my mother on the phone for 17 minutes and I understood, maybe for the first time with full clarity, that she was not going to choose me. She was going to smooth it over. She was going to attend the wedding and sit at the table and smile for the photos and we would all pretend that nothing had happened, and I was being asked, implicitly, to participate in that pretense by staying quiet and staying away and being the easy one. I had always been the easy one. I was 34 years old, and I had spent my entire life being the easy one, and I was sitting in my kitchen on a Wednesday evening realizing that easy had never meant appreciated. It had meant convenient. It had meant that I was the one who absorbed things so other people didn't have to. I thought about calling Caleb back. I thought about it the way you think about pressing a bruise, knowing it will hurt and doing it anyway just to confirm the hurt is real. I drafted a text twice. I deleted it both times. Not because I didn't have things to say. Because I understood it, in that cold quiet place that had opened up in my chest, that the conversation he wanted to have was the one where I forgave him easily and let it go and showed up as the easygoing sister who doesn't make things complicated. And I was not going to perform that for him. The wedding invitation sat on my counter for 2 weeks. I had received it before the call, back when I was presumably still on the guest list, back when my presence had still been an assumed thing. It was cream-colored with gold embossed lettering and it smelled faintly of something floral, and every time I walked past it I felt the specific sourness of something that used to mean one thing and now meant something entirely different. I decided on the dollar 2 days before the wedding. Not out of cruelty. I need you to understand that. Or maybe I need to understand it myself, even now, because the line between a principled response and a cruel one is thinner than I used to believe, and I have spent a long time sitting with the question of which side of that line I was on. Here is what I know: he asked me for money instead of my presence. He reduced our entire relationship, everything I had given him across 31 years of being his sister, to a financial transaction. He opened that door. He chose that language. He made it a matter of contribution rather than love. So I contributed. I sat down at my kitchen table with a personal check and a blank note card. I wrote his name on the check in my clearest handwriting. I wrote the amount in the little box, the same way our mother had taught us both when we were kids learning how to fill out checks for the first time, her hands over ours at the kitchen table, explaining how to spell out the numbers in the long line so nobody could alter it. $1.00. I put it in an envelope. I wrote the note. And then I sealed it and drove to the post office myself because I needed to feel it leave my hands. The wedding was on a Saturday. I spent it alone, not dramatically, not performing solitude for some imagined audience. I ate breakfast. I went for a long walk along the river trail near my apartment. I sat on a bench and watched the water and thought about the 11-year-old version of me who had sat beside her 8-year-old brother on the stairs of their parents' disintegrating house and promised him, without words, that she would always be there. She had meant it. He had received it as optional. My phone was quiet all day Saturday. Sunday too. Monday I got a call from my mother that I let go to voicemail. The message was careful and short. She said the wedding was beautiful. She said she wished I had been there. She said she hoped we could all move forward. Move forward. I played the message 3 times. Not because I needed to hear it again. Because I was trying to locate, somewhere in those 40 seconds of carefully chosen words, any acknowledgement that something had happened. Any recognition that her son had called his sister a week before his wedding and told her that her attendance was worth less to him than a check. There was none. I texted her back. I'm glad it was beautiful. 3 words, a period, sent. Caleb called Thursday. 8 days after the wedding. I watched his name on the screen for all 4 rings and then I watched it go to voicemail and I sat with the specific, unfamiliar feeling of choosing not to answer my brother's call. I had never done that before in my life. In 34 years, I had never once sent Caleb to voicemail intentionally. It felt like setting down something very heavy that I had been carrying for a very long time without realizing how much it weighed. He left a message. His voice was careful in a way it almost never was, Caleb who had always been the easy talker, the charming one, the one who could fill any silence. He said he wanted to touch base. He said he hoped there were no hard feelings. He said Brittany had loved the check gag, called it very on-brand for me. On-brand? He thought it was a gag. He genuinely believed, standing in the wreckage of what he had done, that I had sent him $1 as a joke. That I was the kind of person who processed being discarded by making a funny bit out of it. That we were close enough still, and casual enough still, that this could be a story we told at future family dinners about how his sister had such a great sense of humor about the whole thing. I deleted the voicemail without saving it. The note. People ask about the note. Not many people, because not many people know the full story, but the ones who do always ask. My coworker Dana, who I eventually told everything to over lukewarm coffee in the break room. My friend Petra, who had known Caleb since we were kids, and who went very still when I told her what he had said on that Tuesday call. My therapist, who I started seeing 6 weeks after the wedding and who has never told me whether what I did was right or wrong, only asked me how it felt. I am not going to tell you exactly what the note said. That is the one part of this I am keeping. Caleb has never shown it to anyone. Not Brittany, not my mother, not his friends. I know this because my mother would have mentioned it. Brittany would have weaponized it. The silence around it is its own kind of answer. What I will tell you is this: it was not angry. It was not cruel in the way people imagine cruelty. It did not list grievances or demand apologies or reform the wound. It was simply honest, in the specific, irreversible way that honesty becomes possible when you have finally stopped trying to protect someone from the truth of who they are to you. I said what he had been to me. I said what I had believed about us. I said what the phone call had clarified. And then I said that the $1 was not a gag. It was the precise monetary value of the relationship he had communicated to me, and I had always believed in being exact. I said I hoped the wedding was everything he had wanted. I meant it. The cliffhanger is not dramatic. There is no explosion, no screaming confrontation, no moment where everything boils over into something cinematic. The cliffhanger is the silence. Caleb calling and me not answering. My mother leaving voicemails full of careful, empty words. Brittany posting wedding photos on social media in which there is a gap at the family table that nobody has captioned. My father, who by this point is genuinely just a stranger, somehow hearing the story through the family grapevine and sending me, of all things, a text message that just says heard what happened. You alright? I stared at that text for a long time. My absent, disappeared, checked out father reaching across 20 years of silence to ask if I was alright, while my brother, who I had shown up for relentlessly and completely, was calling my response a gag and waiting for me to laugh along. I wrote back to my father, getting there. And I put my phone down. And I went to bed. And I lay in the dark of my apartment thinking about the 11-year-old girl on the stairs, and the promise she had made, and the fact that promises only hold when both people are keeping them. One of us had stopped. It was not me. The thing about being written out of someone's life is that it does not happen all at once. It happens in the accumulation of small absences. The family group chat where announcements start appearing that nobody texted you about directly. The holiday plans that get finalized without "Are you coming?" The slow, grinding realization that you are receiving information that used to be given to you as a participant and is now being transmitted to you as a courtesy. Like a neighbor being informed about a block party they were not invited to, just so they know why the street will be loud. Thanksgiving was first. My mother hosted. She always hosted. It had been the unchanging constant of our family calendar through every other upheaval, divorce and distance and estrangement and all of it. My mother's house at Thanksgiving. Turkey that she started at 6 in the morning. The specific smell of her stuffing that neither Caleb nor I had ever been able to replicate. The table where we had sat across from each other our entire lives. She called me 3 weeks before. Her voice had that careful ice-walking quality again. She said she hoped I would come. She said it would mean a lot to her. She said Caleb and Brittany were coming and she hoped we could all be adults about things. Adults about things? I asked her, very quietly, if she knew what he had said to me on that Tuesday call. She said she knew it had been a difficult situation. Difficult situation. I told her I would think about it. That was the last conversation we had before Thanksgiving, because I did not call back and she did not push. I spent the holiday with Dana and her family, who fed me until I couldn't move and asked me nothing about my own family and let me sit on their couch watching football with their kids piled around me like warm, oblivious dogs, and it was one of the kindest things anyone has done for me in recent memory. My mother texted at 8 that evening, "We missed you." Caleb did not text at all. The social media piece is its own particular form of information delivery that I was not prepared for. Brittany posted frequently. She had always posted frequently, the kind of curated, aesthetically consistent documentation of a life that makes other people feel like their own lives are unedited and insufficient. After the wedding it accelerated. There were honeymoon photos. There were settling into married life photos. There were photos of their apartment newly decorated, the two of them grinning in front of bookshelves that looked like they had been arranged by someone who charged hourly. Caleb appeared in all of them. Caleb with his easy grin, his arm around Brittany, his entire person radiating the specific contentment of someone who has closed a chapter they found complicated and moved smoothly into something cleaner. There was a photo from Christmas. His first Christmas as a married person. My mother's house, the familiar living room with the familiar tree, and there was Caleb and Brittany and my mother all together around it, and there was the gap where I was not. Brittany captioned it first Christmas as the Harmon family. The Harmon family. I had been a Harmon my entire life. I looked at that photo for a long time. Not with the hot, immediate burn of fresh hurt, but with the dull, low ache of something that had already been processed but still left a mark when you pressed on it. My mother was smiling. She looked genuinely happy. She looked like a woman at a lovely Christmas gathering with her son and daughter-in-law, and the frame of the photo was so complete and so settled that there was genuinely no visible evidence that anything was missing. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the anger of being excluded. The disquieting ease with which my absence had been absorbed. I had believed, somewhere in the unexamined assumptions of my own identity, that I was essential. That the shape of our family required me in it to be complete. That my absence would leave an obvious, unfillable gap. And the photo said, quietly and without malice, that it didn't. That the table had been set for the number of people who showed up. That life had continued in the exact dimensions of whoever remained. I unfollowed Brittany's account. Not blocked. Unfollowed. The difference felt important at the time, though I am less certain of the distinction now. Petra had known Caleb since we were kids. She had been at his high school graduation. She had driven with me on 2 of those 4-hour trips when we helped him move. She knew our history the way people who have been present for it know it, not as a story you tell but as a lived thing they had witnessed in pieces over decades. When I told her about the call and the check and the note, she sat across from me at the restaurant table and she went so still that I thought for a moment she hadn't heard me. Then she said, "What did your mother do?" I told her. The careful voice. The difficult situation. The Thanksgiving where she hoped we could all be adults. Petra put down her fork. She looked at me with the expression of someone doing very fast, very uncomfortable math. She's not going to do anything, is she? It was not a question. No, I told her. She's not. There was a long pause. Petra refilled her wine. Then she said, slowly, like she was thinking it out loud, "He has always gotten away with things because you made it easy. You fixed it. You absorbed it. And so he never had to learn what it cost." I had been thinking this for months, in the inarticulate, half-formed way that thoughts live in you before someone else puts words to them. Hearing it said out loud in Petra's voice, across a restaurant table, with the noise of other people's dinners all around us, was not a revelation. It was a confirmation. And confirmations of things you already know can hurt more than surprises, because they mean you cannot claim you didn't see it coming. "I know," I said. "And the note?" she asked. "He still hasn't mentioned it to anyone." She nodded slowly. "Because he can't. Because to explain the note he'd have to explain what he did to deserve it." 6 months after the wedding, Caleb called again. Not to apologize. I want to be completely clear about that, because I know the shape of this story makes people expect an apology somewhere, some moment of reckoning where he admits what he did and asks for forgiveness. That did not happen. That is not this story. He called because my mother had been diagnosed with something that needed monitoring. Nothing immediately catastrophic, but the kind of thing that reorganizes your understanding of time and makes the comfortable assumption of endless future renegotiations feel suddenly irresponsible. He called to tell me. His voice was businesslike, informational, the voice of someone delivering a status update rather than reaching out to his sister in a moment of shared fear. I thanked him for letting me know. He asked if I had any questions about her care. I said I would call her directly. There was a brief silence, and then he said, "You know, at some point we're going to have to talk about all of this." I let that sentence sit in the air for a moment. "When you're ready to have that conversation," I told him, "I'll be here." He said okay. He hung up. Neither of us has initiated that conversation since. I called my mother 20 minutes later. She sounded genuinely pleased that I had called, in the way she always sounds genuinely pleased, the warmth entirely real even when what surrounds it is complicated. We talked for 40 minutes about her health and her garden and the television series she had started watching. We did not talk about Caleb or the wedding or the gap at the Christmas table. At the end of the call she said she loved me. I said I loved her too. Both of those things were completely true and entirely insufficient. The note, again. I keep returning to it because I think it is the part of this that I need to be honest about. I do not regret sending it. I have examined that carefully, in the deliberate, uncomfortable way my therapist has taught me to examine my own motivations rather than constructing narratives around them. And the answer is consistently the same: I do not regret it. It was honest. It said true things. It named what had happened without exaggeration and without performance. But I am also aware that it was not neutral. That honesty, delivered at that particular moment in that particular way, was also a choice about what I wanted to leave him with. I wanted him to carry something. I wanted the weight to be distributed more evenly than it had been across our entire lives. I wanted, for the first time, to put something down and let him hold it. He has held it. Whatever is in that note, he has carried it for over a year now without showing it to anyone. Which means it landed. Which means somewhere inside the easy grin and the settled contentment of his new life and his new family and his new last name as defined by Brittany's Instagram, there is a sentence or a paragraph or an image that my note put there, and he has not been able to put it somewhere he can ignore it. I do not feel good about that. I also do not feel bad about it. I feel accurate. Last month, a mutual friend from our childhood named Grant texted me out of nowhere. We have not spoken in probably 4 years, the kind of drifting apart that happens to people who were tied together by proximity and circumstance rather than active choice. He said he had run into Caleb and Brittany at a restaurant. He said Caleb had seemed off. He said Caleb had asked Grant if he was still in touch with me. Grant said he had told Caleb no, not really. Caleb had apparently nodded and gone quiet for a while and then changed the subject. Grant's text said, "Don't know what happened between you two, but he seemed like he missed you." I sat with that for a long time. He seemed like he missed me. Not I miss her. Not I need to fix this. Not I made a mistake and I want to be honest with her about it. Just the observable, second-hand, safely deniable seemed like he missed you, filtered through someone else's perception, passed along through a 4-year dormant channel, arriving in my life as the closest thing to an admission Caleb had managed in over a year. I texted Grant back, "Thanks for telling me." I put my phone in my pocket. I went back to whatever I had been doing before the notification appeared. I do not remember what it was. Something ordinary. Something that belonged to the life I was living, the one that had reorganized itself around the space he had vacated, the one that had turned out to be more survivable than I had believed it would be on that Tuesday morning with cold pasta and a phone going quiet in my hand. I think about the girl on the stairs sometimes. The one who made the promise. The one who believed that showing up was enough, that love was a thing you demonstrated through presence and consistency and the willingness to absorb whatever needed absorbing. She was not wrong to believe that. She was wrong to believe it was reciprocal. That is the thing I carry now. Not anger. Not grief, exactly, though it lives in the same neighborhood. The specific, irreversible education of learning that the stories you tell yourself about your own relationships are not always shared by the other person. That you can be someone's constant without being someone's priority. That the love you have for someone is real and true and yours, and it does not obligate them to match it. I am not the sister I was before that Tuesday call. I do not think I will be again. Something recalibrated that cannot be uncalibrated, some fundamental assumption about what I was owed by the people I had given everything to. I am more careful now. More deliberate. Less automatic in my generosity, less willing to absorb things so other people don't have to. Dana says this is growth. My therapist calls it boundary formation. I mostly call it being tired. Caleb is still with Brittany. They are, by all appearances, happy. My mother is managing her health and tending her garden and watching her television series. Life has continued in the shape that remained after the reorganization. Everyone has adapted. I have adapted too. I just adapted into someone who doesn't answer calls she doesn't want to answer, who doesn't show up to places where her presence has been assigned a dollar value, who keeps one thing for herself that nobody else gets to reframe or explain or call a gag. The note. He has never shown it to anyone. And as long as he hasn't, it is still doing exactly what I meant it to do, sitting in the space between who he told himself he was and what he actually did, refusing to be comfortable, refusing to be funny, refusing to be anything other than the precise and permanent record of the one time I finally, at 34 years old, stopped being the easy one. Some doors, once you understand what was behind them, you close from the outside. You do not knock again. You do not wait to see if they will open. You just finally, quietly, walk away. And you take the key.